June 7th, 2:38 p.m. I was standing in my aunt's living room in Toledo, Ohio. She was dead. The house smelled like mothballs and old coffee. Her TV was still on. Judge Judy was yelling at someone. I turned it off. I was 41 years old. High school teacher. Social studies. $58,000 a year. My wife's name is Linda. We have 2 kids. A boy, 14, named Ethan. A girl, 11, named Claire. We rented a small house in a neighborhood called Old Orchard. The landlord's name was Mr. Henderson. He raised the rent every year. $1,400. Then $1,450. Then $1,500. We never complained. My Aunt Eleanor was my mom's older sister. She never married. No kids. Worked at a dry cleaner called Clean and Press for 37 years. She made $11.50 an hour at the end. Drove a 1999 Buick LeSabre. The paint was peeling. The check engine light had been on since 2005. She lived in a small ranch house on Maple Street. 3 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. A basement that flooded every spring. She died of a heart attack. 74 years old. Found her on the kitchen floor by the mailman. His name was Gary. He said she looked peaceful. I don't know if that's true or if he was just being nice. The funeral was small. 14 people. My mom cried. I didn't. My aunt and I weren't close. She sent birthday cards with $20 inside. That was the extent of our relationship. I saw her at Thanksgiving every few years. She always brought the same thing, a Jell-O salad with marshmallows. No one ate it. She didn't notice. The lawyer called me 2 weeks later. Her name was Mrs. Patterson. She had a voice like gravel and a slow way of speaking. She said, "You're the sole beneficiary of Eleanor's estate." I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "You get the house and about $200,000 in cash." I sat down. My kitchen table wobbled. One leg was shorter than the others. I put a napkin under it. I said, "How much cash?" She said, $204,800. After taxes and fees. I said, "And the house?" She said, "Estimated value, $650,000. I did the math. $650,000 plus $204,000. That's $854,000. I was 41 years old. My net worth was $140,000, mostly in a 403b retirement account and an old Honda Odyssey with 130,000 miles. The Odyssey had a dent in the rear bumper from when Ethan backed into a mailbox. I never fixed it. I told Linda that night. She cried. Not sad. Happy. She said, "We can buy a house. A real house. With a yard for the kids." I said, "We can." She said, "We don't have to rent anymore." I said, "We don't." We opened a bottle of wine. $14.99. Barefoot. It tasted like victory. Ethan asked why we were celebrating. I said, "Aunt Eleanor left us a gift." He said, "Cool." Claire asked if we could get a dog. I said, "Maybe." Linda laughed. That was the last time she laughed for a long time. The first letter came on July 22nd. A Tuesday. White envelope. Return address. Reverse Mortgage Solutions, Dallas, Texas. I opened it. My heart was still light. I didn't know yet. Dear Mr. Derrick, this letter is to inform you that the property located at 1847 Maple Street, Toledo, Ohio, is subject to a reverse mortgage lien in the amount of $312,000. I read it 3 times. Reverse mortgage. My aunt took out a reverse mortgage. I didn't even know what that meant. I Googled it. A reverse mortgage is a loan for seniors. The bank gives them money. When they die, the bank takes the house. I called Mrs. Patterson. She said, "Yes, I knew about the reverse mortgage. I was going to tell you." I said, "When?" She said, "At our next meeting." I said, "Next meeting is in 2 weeks." She said, "I know. I'm sorry." The second letter came 3 days later. July 25th, a Friday. This one was from the county tax office. Notice of delinquent property taxes. My aunt hadn't paid property taxes in 4 years. Total owed, $47,000. With penalties and interest, $61,300. I sat on my couch. Linda was at work. The kids were at school. I was alone. I called Mrs. Patterson again. She said, "Yes, I knew about the taxes. I was compiling a list." I said, "A list of what?" She said, liens. I said, how many liens? She said, I don't know yet. I'm still waiting on documents. The third letter came on August 2nd, a Saturday. Certified mail. I had to sign for it. The return address, St. Vincent Medical Center, Collections Department. My aunt had unpaid medical bills. A surgery in 2019 for a gallbladder. A hospital stay in 2021 for pneumonia. Physical therapy after she fell in 2020. Ambulance rides. Specialist visits. Total, $189,000. I stopped opening letters after that. They kept coming. A credit card from Chase. $14,000. A personal loan from Fifth Third Bank. $28,000. A debt to a roofing company called Able Roof. $7,500. A lien from a contractor who fixed her basement flood in 2018. $9,200. A utility bill from Toledo Edison for $1,000. An unpaid homeowner's insurance premium. $6,000. I made a spreadsheet. I'm a social studies teacher. I'm not good at spreadsheets. But I learned. Row by row. Debt by debt. Reverse mortgage, $312,000. Property taxes, $61,300. Medical bills, $189,000. Credit card, $14,000. Personal loan, $28,000. Roofing, $7,500. Contractor, $9,200. Utilities, for $1,000. Homeowner's insurance, $6,000. Miscellaneous small debts, $9,000. Total, $640,000. The house was worth $650,000. The cash was $204,800. If I sold the house, the debts would take almost everything. I would keep maybe $10,000. Maybe less. I called Mrs. Patterson. I said, can I sell the house before the reverse mortgage takes it? She said, yes, but the bank gets paid first. Then the tax lien. Then the medical liens. Then the other creditors. Whatever is left is yours. I said, how much will be left? She said, I can't say for certain. But based on my experience, maybe nothing. I hung up. I walked to my kitchen. The table still wobbled. The napkin was still under the leg. I stood there for a long time. I thought about Aunt Eleanor. About the Jell-O salad. About the $20 birthday cards. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just trying to survive. Linda came home at 6:47 p.m. She saw my face. She said, how bad? I said, $640,000 in debt. She said, on the house. I said, on the house. She said, what about the cash? I said, the cash is separate. The cash is ours. $204,800. She sat down. The chair creaked. She said, so we get $204,000. And we walk away from the house. I said, that's one option. She said, what's the other option? I said, we fight the liens. Hire a lawyer. Try to reduce the medical bills. Challenge the tax penalty. Maybe keep the house. She said, how much would the lawyer cost? I said, I don't know. Maybe $20,000. Maybe $50,000. She said, we can't afford that. We have $140,000 in retirement. That's it. We can't gamble on a house that might be worthless. I said, I know. She said, so we take the $204,000. We use it for a down payment on a different house. A house without debts. A house with a yard. I said, I know. She said, then why do you look so sad? I said, because it was supposed to be more. She didn't say anything. She just put her hand on mine. Her hand was warm. She had been washing dishes. Her hands always smelled like lemon soap. I hired a lawyer anyway. His name was Mr. Thompson. He was 62 years old. Gray hair. Without ties. His office was in a brick building downtown. He charged $450 an hour. I paid him a $15,000 retainer. That came from the $204,000 cash. He was a nice man. He said, I think we can reduce the medical bills. Hospitals negotiate. He said, I think we can challenge the tax penalty. You might get some of the interest removed. He said, the reverse mortgage is ironclad. That one stays. 6 months. Mr. Thompson sent letters. Made calls. File motions. The medical bills went from $189,000 to $112,000. Saved $77,000. The tax penalty went from $61,300 to $48,000. Saved $13,000. The credit card company settled for $8,000 instead of $14,000. Saved $6,000. The utility company agreed to take $2,500 instead of $4,000. Saved $1,500. Total debt after negotiation, $490,000. The house appraised at $635,000. We listed it. It sat on the market for 9 months. No offers. A real estate agent named Brenda said, "The basement flood history scares people." I said the basement was fixed. She said, "Doesn't matter." She showed the house 14 times. 0 offers. We dropped the price. $600,000. Then $580,000. Then $550,000. A buyer came in October. A young couple. First-time home buyers. He worked at a warehouse. She was a waitress. They offered $520,000. I accepted. I didn't negotiate. I just wanted over. At closing, the bank took $312,000 for the reverse mortgage. The county took $48,000 for taxes. The hospital took $112,000 for medical bills. The credit card company took $8,000. The personal loan bank took $28,000. The roofer took $7,500. The contractor took $9,200. The utility company took $2,500. The insurance company took $6,000. Total paid to creditors, $534,700. The house sold for $520,000. The difference was $14,700. I had to pay that out of pocket. From the cash inheritance. From my aunts, $204,800. After paying Mr. Thompson $45,000 in fees, 6 months at $450 per hour, plus expenses, after paying the $14,700 shortfall, after paying realtor fees, $31,200, after paying transfer taxes, $8,000, after paying miscellaneous closing costs, $6,000. I had $99,900 left from the original $204,800. I sat in Mr. Thompson's office. He handed me a check, $99,901.47. He said, "I'm sorry it wasn't more." I said, "Me too." He said, "You did the right thing. You fought for it." I said, "Doesn't feel like I won." He said, "You didn't lose." That's not nothing. I drove home. The Honda Odyssey had 134,000 miles now. The check engine light was still on. The dent was still in the bumper. I didn't care. Linda was in the kitchen. She was making spaghetti. The kids were doing homework at the table. The table still wobbled. The napkin was still under the leg. I put the check on the counter. She looked at it. She said, "That's it." I said, "That's it." She said, "What about the house?" I said, "Gone." She said, "So we have $100,000. I said, "Plus our retirement. $140,000. Total $240,000. She stirred the sauce. She said, "That's still a down payment." I said, "On what?" She said, "On a house. A small one. Not an old orchard. Somewhere cheaper. We bought a house in a neighborhood called Southwick. $180,000. 3 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. No basement. A small yard with a dying maple tree. We put $40,000 down. The mortgage is $1,100 a month. Less than rent. I still teach social studies. Linda works at a dental office. The kids share a bedroom. Ethan complains. Claire doesn't. She's like her Aunt Eleanor. Quiet. Resilient. She asked me once if Aunt Eleanor was a good person. I said yes. She was just lonely. Claire said, "I would have eaten her Jell-O salad." I believe her. The leftover $60,000 from the inheritance? We put it in a savings account. It earns 1.2% interest. $60 a month. We use it for emergencies. The car broke down in March. $1,400 for a new alternator. The water heater died in May. $800. The maple tree fell on the fence in July. $2,200. Linda cried about the tree. I said, "It was dying anyway." She said, "I know, but it was our tree." I think about my aunt sometimes. She didn't know she was leaving me a mess. She thought she was helping. She took the reverse mortgage because she needed money for groceries. She stopped paying taxes because her Social Security wasn't enough. She ignored the medical bills because she was scared. I'm not angry at her. I'm angry at the system. But that's a different story. The kids don't know about the inheritance. They just know we have a house now. A real house. With a yard. Ethan plays catch with a neighbor kid. Claire reads books under the maple stump. Linda plants flowers in the spring. I mow the lawn every Saturday. It's not the life I imagined when Mrs. Patterson called. It's not $854,000. It's not a mansion. It's not freedom. But it's ours. And that's enough.